The political violence that haunted the 1980s general election in Jamaica has evaporated, but matters centered around the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, continue to haunt the nation almost 43 years after that infamous national vote changed Jamaica. Guys, this video is gonna be really deep. I suggest you watch until the end, especially in a time like this where Jamaica seems to be on a brink of collapse. The general election, held on October 30, 1980, ended in victory for the Jamaica Labour Party, which trashed the People's National Party by 51 seats to 9, a record margin of victory for any party up to the time. Unlike the 1980s general election campaign, our last election ended with little political confrontation or deaths associated with it. The conclusion drawn by political analysts is that Jamaica may have finally matured. If you think Jamaica has matured, hit the like button. If you think otherwise, please leave a comment. The 1980 poll of police official statistics saw 844 people murdered, a figure that political analysts believe to be higher, due to the limitations and the challenges in recording criminal activities at the time. Almost 35% of those killed were slaughtered in the constituency of West Central St. Andrew, which had the JLP's Ferdinand Yap and the PNP's Carl Roshan Thompson as candidates. Prime Minister Michael Manley came to power on February 29, 1972, and led the PNP to a 37-16 seat victory over the JLP, and followed up with another triumph over the Edward Seaga-led JLP, 47-13 seats. In a December 1976 general election gamble, Manley called an early election on October 5th at a mass meeting in Sam Sharp Square in Montego Bay, having just over a year left of his second term. The crowd on the October rally was estimated by at least 150,000, which Manley used as an unscientific ruler to measure his party's strength. But the hardships that emanated from a borrowing agreement with the IMF in 1978 were becoming unbearable for the masses of the country, and the PNP was beginning to feel the heat. Veteran JLP politician Pernell Charles said that due to the state of economy emerging from an agreement with the IMF, Manley walked out of the IMF and was able to ride through and win the election. Charles, who was imprisoned during the controversial 1976 state of emergency, also used his experience while in detention to send a message that Jamaicans should have nothing more to do with the PNP.
There was political war among both political parties as a result of the PNP decided to change the political system and to move from what we had to what we call social and communism.
Pernell Charles went on to say, and I quote, "I was in detention from 1976 to 1977, and when I came out, I was hitting the road, telling of the problems we had with the government forcing the 1976 election as a result of tactics. I was going to run in the strongest JLP seat in 1976, which is the St. Andrew Southwest, and they took it and gave it to Portia Simpson Miller. At the time, over 8,300 JLP supporters left the constituency. I was one of the regular platform speakers, and the message that we sent was that we would never want another government to lock up the opposition and win." End quote. Manley decided in February that election would be called the same year. He vowed that there would be no voting until the new voters list was completed, a process that took 8 months. Meanwhile, the economy was under pressure. The IMF conditionalities were burning up the laboring class, the middle class, and the unemployed. Manley's decision to sever ties with the IMF in March 1980 led to further hardships, including a struggle to pay public servants, 11,000 of whom, he said, would have to be chopped from the state payroll in order to shore up the $50 million budget for the fiscal year 1980 to 1981. This led to a strike by over 300 workers of the government-run Jamaica Public Service Company. The strike plunged 70% of Jamaica into darkness. Blood on the streets began flowing like a river, as tension mounted between the JLP and the PNP factions. The Eventide home fire, in which 153 elderly women burnt to a crisp, occurred on May 21st. Police said that the building for the elderly and impoverished was torched by men from the South St. Andrew constituency. And guys, there will be a link to that video in the descriptions below if you're interested to see that video. An incident known as the Gold Street Massacre resulted in 5 men being killed in the JLP enclave of Gold Street.
This is where the Gold Street Massacre happened 40 years ago. We're gonna go inside.
Some gunshot. First M16 fire in Jamaica is right here. When the man get M16, first time fire, it's right here. And dead shot coming to here, we kill a man inside here. And before them go on at the back, and fire one shot out here. And I had to check police. But after that, around 3 minutes after that, barrage a shot. I realized that police, that bad man's a shooter.
In April, the south side of central Kingston, the Anatown police station, was attacked by gunmen, resulting in the death of a police officer and a civilian. As the ruling political administration of the day became increasingly jumpy about opposition to its policies, the Jamaica Defense Force detained 24 soldiers and 3 civilians for allegedly plotting to overthrow the government. All 27 were later freed. Several people were killed on National Heroes Day, mere days before the election, while there was further bloodshed in St. Elizabeth's southeast community of Tophill when supporters of the JLP and the PNP clashed. The Denhamtown police station also came in for fierce attacks from gunmen. There were several street confrontations involving ministers such as Carl Samuda, Winston Spalding, Douglas Vaz, and others. But the opposition JLP were determined that the PNP should not go back in power, and they continued to convince the people. There was one confrontation up Hope Road with Dudley Thompson and DK Duncan on the PNP side. They were deadlocked in the street. The JLP would not move and the PNP would not move. They had to negotiate terms and conditions right there in the street. Pernell Charles, who went on to contest the St. Thomas East seat, blew away newcomer Winston Jones by over 5,000 votes. That same seat was won by the PNP in 1976 when Violet Vi Thompson upset JLP stalwart Lyndon Newland by a mere 310 votes. The confrontations were in every constituency. JLP Deputy Leader and former Prime Minister Hugh Shearer's motorcade came under attack in Falmouth, while Manley's team was attacked in Spanish Town. The Workers' Party of Jamaica members were arrested in Hanover for possessing what the police claimed to be bombs, and there were countless other attacks and confrontations. The leftist Workers' Party of Jamaica, led by Dr. Trevor Monroe, had been quietly supporting the PNP, which fueled more rumors of a communist takeover, a claim Manley consistently denied, even though his friendship with socialist Cuba had strengthened during his tenure. Dr. Winston Davidson, who contested his only election that year and vowed never to do so again after what happened during his campaign, described it as the most awful period in Jamaica's history. The medical practitioner who lost to the JLP's Dr. Mavis Gilmore in St. Andrew West Rural insists that he was marked for death. I had a meeting planned for Essex Hall and something came up and I did not go, but my driver went. When the vehicle got to a point, gunmen shot it up on the side that I would have been sitting. Luckily, the driver managed to get away safely, said Dr. Davidson, who polled 7,211 votes to Gilmore's 11,961. A whole set of polling stations in the St. Andrew West Rural constituency were not opened. The people lined up at the polling stations from before 6 o'clock and still did not get to vote. It was one of the wickedest elections. Not only did they not open the polling stations, but ballot boxes were tampered with, and even in areas where people did not vote, there was a full count in the boxes. Dr. Davidson said, "From that, I said I would never run again in another election, and I have stuck to that, even after Michael Manley asked me to run again in 1989. A lot of people died. Soldiers killed a lot of them. They ransacked Dr. Davidson's house, saying that they were looking for weapons. They threw away his campaign material in a gully, and Herb Rose, his campaign manager, was locked up. It was an election in which the East-West tension played out in all forms. The East-West tension is in reference to Manley and the PNP's embrace of Cuba and the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, on one hand, and the right of the center, JLP, which was closer to the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Manley's decision not to boycott the Moscow Olympic Games in the summer of 1980 also did not sit well with the USA. His democratic socialism philosophy, declared in 1974, was also not clearly defined, although it appeared to be closest in political systems of the Janos Kadar-led Hungary with its democratic centralism, a system that had a mix of state ownership of the means of production, distribution, exchange, and among others the cooperative system, as well as limited capitalism. The JLP, on the other hand, waved a social democrat flag for the electorate to see. The PNP lost currency when three of the party's big names, David Corr, a former deputy prime minister, former finance minister Eric Bell, and one of the brilliant minds, Vivian Blake, who Manley defeated for the leadership of the PNP on February 9, 1969, left the party. The utterances of Cuban ambassador Ulysses Estrada did not help Manley's cause either, with candidate for Clarendon Northwest and former education minister Edwin Allen, among others, calling for him to be declared persona non grata. Seaga duly obliged days after the election and severed ties with Cuba a year later. Hurricane Allen destroyed sections of the island's infrastructure, including a telling blow on the banana industry, leaving behind a damage estimated at $155.5 million. Coupled with the hoarding of goods by business operators determined to see the backs of Manley and the PNP, the setbacks of the banana industry added to a shortage of food, which miraculously was plentiful again a day after the election. Tough-talking PNP candidate of St. Andrew East Rural, Roy Magan, and his policeman bodyguard, Acting Corporal Errol White, were killed by policemen in Gardentown Square a day before nominations opened. Magan's replacement, Lloyd Perry-Stulls, was soundly beaten by Joan Gordon, who in recent years became Executive Director of the National Solid Waste Management Authority. The JLP, with its popular slogan, "Deliverance is near," swept the election. Seaga's promise of making money jingle in your pockets was now eagerly anticipated, even as D.K. Duncan lashed the electoral system as flawed. Duncan pointed the finger at Chairman of the Electoral Advisory Committee, Professor Gladstone Mills, and Director of Elections, Carl Dundas, whom he said failed to clamp down on electoral malpractices. Dundas emigrated to the USA days after. Duncan, a dental surgeon, also blamed the police and army for the roles they played in booting the PNP from office. In the end, the JLP not only swept the polls, but scored 58.9%, or 502,115 of the 86.9% voter turnout. The PNP, for its sweat and tears, collected 350,064 voters, or 41.1% of the 860,746 votes cast. The PNP had taken a brutal beating. Some big names in the party were cut down, some only temporarily. The list included the following: P.J. Patterson, Howard Koch, John Jr., Clive Dobson, Dr. Aston King, Desmond Leckie, Arnold Bertram, Sidney Pagan, Derek Rochester, Winston Jones, Jack Stevenson, O.D. Ramtali, Roddy Lawson, Jim Thompson, and Derek Evan. The time had come for the Boston, United States-born Edward Seaga, a Harvard graduate in anthropology, to take charge. He became Jamaica's 5th Prime Minister, and the healing process began in earnest. If you found anything interesting or informative in this video, please let me know in the comment section down below. And if you haven't yet subscribed to Elite Jamaica, consider doing so by clicking the subscribe button. If you want to donate to the channel, links will be in the descriptions below. Thank you for your support.
Elite Jamaica. Don't forget to drop a like and a comment. Don't forget to subscribe.